So as you know thus far from what we've looked at, you can really sign into Lync from anywhere. We've got the edge role deployed. So that means we can sign in from our house. We can sign in from a Starbucks. And when we call 911, if we're enterprise voice enabled, we have to make sure that we're sending the right information out to those operators. Now I'm actually looking right now on TechNet on this topic of acquiring a location. And basically there's an interesting way that we determine where you're at and send that information, make sure it's all plugged into Lync server. The reason I brought this topic up is because it has a nice diagram in the help about what actually happens. So here's your deployment basically, right? You've got your mediation server, your front end pool. In this case, both these roles are on the same box. And then we have a location information server. And in our case, all three of these things are basically kind of hooked together here. But from your Lync client, when you dial out, we've got some information that's going to be added into location information services. So if you are on the corporate network, we can take maybe that subnet or that switch port that you're connected to on the network and associate a specific address. And when you place that call to the 911 operator, that information is sent across the trunk to them. Now, sometimes you might be calling in from an external location through the edge and we don't know where you're at. So we might have to rely on you or the end user to enter that information in. So we can set up a policy to kind of dictate how all of this works. So let's jump into the console and we'll take a look at a few scenarios. So on the left-hand side here, what you want to do is go down to network here and go to location policy. And we have a global one here. We could create site-based or user-based policies. But let's take a look at the global. We'll go ahead and enable enhanced emergency services. And for location, what we can say here is we can say either required or maybe just a disclaimer. Maybe if we don't know where you're at, we just give you a disclaimer and say, hey, listen, we don't know where you're at. We can't send the right information to the 911 dispatcher. If we set it to required, the Lync client will physically prompt you to enter your location information. And then we want to make sure we use this location for emergency services. And for the PSTN usage, of course, that would be our 911 PSTN usage. When dialing 911, of course, the dialed number would be 911. And the interesting thing about this policy is you can have it conference in an additional person. So you can have somebody notified and also conferenced in. So maybe a manager or somebody that works at the security desk. You know, if somebody dials 911, go ahead and conference that user in, do maybe a two-way. So if you had your policy configured this way and you had a conference URI such as SIP security at interface.ttlabs.com. Maybe you always had your security people signed in as this SIP user. If somebody dialed 911, the call would go out to the PSTN through your 911 provider out to the 911 operator, but we'd also do a two-way conference with the security folks at that point. So they could actually speak to the operator as well. Or you could just have a one-way and all they can do is listen in. So I'm not actually going to set this piece up right now, but I am going to basically have my policy to where it'll send the information and then require it as well. Now, I do want to do a couple other things in the shell. So what I want to do here is take a look at all of these subnet commands. So I'm going to do a git command *LIS*. And let's clean that up a little bit. Let's do set dash *LIS* command type commandlet. That's a little bit better. So what I want to show you here is that we have set CS LIS location, LIS port, subnet, switch, wireless access point. So this is kind of nice. You can take specific information or elements on your network and associate that with locations. For example, I might have a wireless access point. And if you're connecting from an SSID called Central, that might be an address on Central Avenue. So you can get very granular with this. You can do it down on the access point level. You can do it at a switch port level or specific subnets. So for example, a subnet might look something like this. If we did set CS LIS subnet, subnet might be 192.168.3.0. Location would be Phoenix, perhaps. Street name, Central. Avenue. Arizona. And Phoenix. So there we go. I only populated a few things here, but you can see that I've got anything in this subnet would automatically set the location in Phoenix at 3301 Central Avenue in Phoenix, Arizona. And I'd probably want to fill out the postal code and country and all that as well. And you can do that while you're creating it with the set CS LIS subnet. And I can add as many of these as I need. Now, before this type of information will get sent across the trunk to my 911 provider, I have to make sure I modify the trunk configuration. So if we take a look at Get CS trunk configuration, you can see that we have this option, Enable PID FLO support. We need to make sure that's set to true. So we just have the global trunk configuration right now. So I'm just going to say get, pipe it over to set CS trunk configuration. And we'll enable that property so the location information defined will actually be sent out over the trunk. So our location information has been added into the system, our trunk configuration is set, and now we're ready to test out calling 911 from a Lync client.